You're listening to Highest Level with Michael Bailey and Anthony Dawson, a podcast dedicated to unlocking peak performance, powerful mindset shifts, and the real conversations behind success. Get ready to think bigger, grow faster, and aim higher. This is Highest Level.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Highest Level podcast with myself, Anthony Dawson. I am a real estate agent based in Pendle, which is next to Burnley in Lancashire in the northwest of England. And with me, my co-host.
It's me, Michael Bailey. Delighted to be here once again. I also am an estate agent and I work in and around Preston, South Ribble and the Fylde Coast. And I'm delighted to welcome our first guest, my mentor, and a great friend of mine, Ali Harper. We're going to be talking today primarily about leadership. So, Ali, thanks ever so much for agreeing to come on and just give us a little intro about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, chaps. Real honour to be here. Ali Harper. I team leader and icon with EXP UK, currently residing in Northumberland, north of Newcastle. Launched my business there coming on 4 years after leaving the bright lights of London behind, which is when I last worked with Master Bailey. And I'm looking forward to questions they're about to throw at me. It's now payback. Is it all the questions in Charlie's Outdoor world? Now it's, Ali, what have you got to offer? So, yeah, excited and, like I say, guys, thrilled and honoured to be here to share what wisdom I can.
Wonderful. So thanks so much, Ali. So this episode is going to be about leadership. Of course, we've covered quite a lot of stuff about estate agency, but this is both an agency podcast, but a more general podcast as well for people in terms of leadership of their teams or leadership of themselves, or to be applicable to many different situations. So my own view, to put it out, I personally think Ali's a great leader. Ali helped a number of top performing agents at Keller Williams back in the day propel themselves forward and establish their businesses. But I know that you've been on quite a journey with leadership from the early part of your career, perhaps, to now. So just talk us through a little bit of your background.
Okay, so, well, thank you, Michael, for your very kind words. I'll just add to that, or kind of dilute that a little bit. The leader's only as good as the people that they're looking after. You know, because you could be the best leader in a room with a bunch of people who are not learning based and coachable, and it'll all come down like a house of cards. So just on that Keller Williams thing, start with the end in mind. The Keller Williams thing, just one ad. Yourself, the Joshies, the Hillsy, the Sarah Mortons, the big names at Keller that have all gone on to do bigger and better things, I believe. They're running their own businesses, but any leader is only the result of the sum of the people that they had the good fortune to look after, because there was a whole host of other people that were really nice and really friendly people. But
that's a lovely observation there, because I always try to link it back to something I can relate to. And if I think about, leadership and team members, they are all part of the same entity, and it's the classic, which link in the chain is the most important. Well, they're all equally important. So a leader having the right team members, they're all the same value. And to have a good leader, you need good team members. So that's a really interesting observation there.
Yeah, because if they're not going to turn up, we're going nowhere. Do you know what I mean? Everyone talks about Lewis Hamilton or whatever, but he's only as good as the sum of the parts that happened before. Because if he's got a kind of shit team owner or shit pit crew, who in fairness, the pit crew take a leadership role in his outcome. So it's the same. I know we're going off topic with F1 for a minute, but it was the first thing that came to mind.
I don't know. I don't know if we have gone off topic there, though, because you make a really good point, especially about F1, because one of the most important people was his trainer, Angela. Now, on the face of it,
Ferrari.
Yeah, she's moved with him to Ferrari. Yeah, you would say that, well, to the outside, I guess the view might be that, she's just his trainer, et cetera, but she's his traveling partner. She's his, there's obviously, and this is where relationships come into it, I think. There's clearly a very important relationship there, in terms of trying to achieve the success. So sometimes we can look at big hitters in the teams and this, that, and the other, but we've all got a lady like Angela in our lives or have at previous roles that really held the teams together.
Well, everybody's got somebody somewhere. Listen, nobody achieves success on their own, and there will be leaders in different, whether it's a nutritionist, whether it's a whether it's a psychiatrist, whoever it is, But another sports analogy, you've still got to have the Kobe Bryant mentality to be in the court an hour before everyone else. You still get leaders in his business, but there'll be other people that his coach or mentor would have looked after, but didn't. But everyone's like, remember Kobe. That's not because his coach was brilliant, his leader was brilliant. He had the mindset to rock up and turn up. This is my point coming back to your state agency. You had the mindset to turn up. Josh had the mindset, and a whole host of you did, and that's why you went on. And that's why, I'm grateful for, for the plaudits and Spencer, that we both know from my time of Heart. And
Machine.
And he's absolutely one of the best stagers I've ever worked with. And if you look at Gilbert and Rose now, and I'm watching this, Gilbert and Rose in Essex, this guy is an absolute phenomenon. And all I had was the good grace of being his performance coach with Spice of Heart for 9 months. The guy went on to be the best listed in Heart. They gave him a bottle of champagne. He thought, fuck it, I've done better than that. And he left. But what happened there was his mentality. I think I've told you this story before, Michael. I can't even remember the year, but whatever it was, Spencer called me and said, Ali, we need to sit down. I need to get to number one. And said, well, let's look at this. And we broke it down really quite simply. Because whilst, you could argue that I was a leader to him or a coach or mentor, I'm nothing without him saying to me.
Let's just unpack that a bit more, though, because he took those numbers and he was relentlessly consistent, and he'd be doing whatever. If he'd not hit his number on a Tuesday, he would literally do whatever it took in the right way.
This guy would door knock 3 times a day. This guy would work 7 days a week. It's why he's the best. He's the hungriest days I've ever worked with. And don't get me wrong, nothing to take away from you or any other people I work with, but Spencer was just wired differently. I'd never met anyone like Spencer. But he would, I talk about, will you draw blood for it? He was drawing blood for that Top Guns trophy. No matter what happens, he wanted to be the best in that business. And he worked his socks off, and he gave him a bottle of champagne. He was like, is that it? I've just blown the doors off of this. I've broken all records in this corporate business. You give me a handshake and a bottle of champagne. Stick it up.
There's another little observation in there. In a world that's, I think, really focused on data, and there's so much data out, I think it's really easy to get analysis paralysis to the point where you kind of, to relate it to your analogy, there's multiple league tables, or I'm trying to do a bit in that, a bit in that, a bit in that. And what you've done there, and it's hand in glove. You've highlighted, look, this is the only data that is actually relevant to meet your main objective. And then that was picked up, and there was a data filter put on by Spencer. And he said, yeah, you know what? You're right. I'm going to put the blinkers on. I'm throwing the kitchen sink at this exclusively. I'm not interested in other things because, and this is something I'm quite keen on. Never measure yourself off somebody else's definition of success. So the two of you had a chit chat and said, right, what does success look like? Right, success, tangible, it's 401. Let's break it down, because a mountain is built up of a multitude of molehills. Right, so the daily molehill is this, bang, and then just sequentially chewing away with that data filter. And I really love that analogy and the process, and the proof's in the pudding because, crushed it.
And he's also gone on with his business partner to build an absolutely insane business. Even now, is obviously connected with him on socials. The levels that he goes to is unreal. So he's...
hang on. Why are we talking to Ali? We should have Spencer on.
Spencer, yeah. It's a relentless drive. And that's the thing, coming back to the topic of leadership. All the leader's doing is taking you from this direction and saying, but we're going in this direction now.
Yeah.
By giving you the tools and expanding your thinking. So coming back to the question you've asked me, I told you we're going to waffle. We'll go back to the question you asked about leadership. So let's go back. My first, hindsight's a beautiful thing. My first thing it was leadership in sports, in rugby, school captain, club captain, whatever. And you don't really know. You're not taught to be a leader. You're just like, who's willing to get their nose broken first? Who's going to hit that tackle first? Well, you don't know. But at the same point, when you break that down to today's terminology of what a leader is, you look over your shoulder at the team behind you or not. Because that's the difference between management and leadership. Management tells you what to do. Leadership will show you how to get there. And that's, from a sports analogy, you look at the best leaders or the best captains, and Richie McCaw, Mark Johnson, from rugby specifically. The people run through a wall for these guys. And, it's topical now, the Lions, whatever. Is Mauro Tosi the right guy? Looks like it. Looks like it. Everyone's kind of got behind him. But then you look at the captain's table. I saw a thing last week about the Lions captain's lunch. You look around the table and you've got some massive names there. But then you look at them and say they were leaders because you had an entire country, an entire hemisphere were like, we believe in this guy, this is where we're going to go. So I didn't realise that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing myself to a Lions coach, but at the same point, you don't know you what you have in you. But my stages of career, I started at the bottom, junior neg, negotiator, assistant manager. But it kind of got to the fact that they kind of, the meeting, the things at KFH. So I joined KFH in 2009, I think it was, 2009, left there 2015. And KFH, I've said this in other podcasts, but to put things in perspective, and I'm not in any way saying this is KFH today, the KFH I joined in 2009 was, we are the best in the city, in London. We're the best agent in London. It's an honour and privilege to be working with us. We expect nothing but absolute excellence from you. So you're surrounded by everybody. You get the mindset of, we can't fail because there's a queue at the door waiting for my seat. So you had to really go. So they wound me up, and I was off the chain. Joined as assistant manager, but was not really told how to manage. So I spent, and in fact, let's go back a step. First question Julian Peake asked me, regional director, is, what's your goal? So I want to run one of your branches in 6 months. That was a pure arrogant statement because when I joined KFH, it was like the pinnacle of the stage agency at that point in my mind was a manager for KFH. You could manage an office for KFH in London. You had made it. There's nothing beyond that. You've made it because the directors, I think, are all still there. God rest their soul. I don't know whether they're still in wheelchairs, but they've been there forever. They're not going anywhere. So you look at them and think, they're the pillars. We're never going to become a director at KFH, but a manager, it's as good as it gets. So to get there, the qualification, and you had to be the best at everything. Best lister, best sales, best mortgages, just be an all-round fucking superhero. So I took that literally and walked over everybody to get there. Like, blew everyone out the water. Because I was like, one goal, I want to be the top of the league tables and then they'll just give me an office. Give me an office. And about halfway through Q1, so I joined November 2009. I was given an office July 2010. So we rewind back probably about March or April. Went to assistant managers meeting and they were talking about this girl called Lindsay Steele. A lovely person. She went on to run an office before me. And I was like, and I came out of that meeting and I remember we're in the bar. What we do is we'd have the meeting. We'd go to the bar. You'd have Julian, you'd have Barry Steer, who was the absolute god of sales at the time. He was running sales for KFH London. This guy was an absolute superhero. What do you think of today, guys? What do you think of reality? I went, it was shit. All you did was talk about Lindsay Steele. And I took that literally. I was like, what? No way. But then Jules Pullman said, listen, Ali, you need to understand something. I said, you may well be one of the best estate agents, but you're a shit leader. And they said, right. He says, you need to understand something, Ali. You're hitting every parameter to be a branch manager. But there's one thing you're completely missing. And it's not my fault for not telling you, but the team don't like you. They're not a nice person, Ali. And that was a wake-up call. Because for me, he stays, well, anything to hit a goal was blunt force trauma. Just gonna go. I don't care. I would stay behind. I would do deals in the car park. I would be the best negotiator. I could hear, oh, James would get 357. Right, I need 358, 359. It was horribly state agency. But it took that, and the reason I've taken it down this tangent is because it took that for Barry and Jules in that hotel bar to say, Ali, you're like a boulder. Stop. Look around you. Everyone's bleeding. The place is on fire. You're number one, but the whole place is on fire. So there was that moment. It was that turning point where I was like, you're right, I need to change who I am as a person and start caring about other people. Because I didn't care about anyone else. It was just like, this is my paycheck, my income, my league table. It's all about Ali and Harper. But it wasn't. Because although I was an assistant manager, it's just a title. An assistant manager at the time was deemed as, it's a manager in waiting. Just don't cock it up. But nobody told me, hey, look after the people, though, Ali. You're going to be responsible for these people. So change my bedside manner. And whilst there's plenty of people, may or may not watch this and think, you're still a bit of a dick, Ali. You're still a bit direct. And I get that. But that's just who I am as a person. I'm not, It is wrong of me to say I'm not here to make friends. I am here to make friends. At the same point, I do believe you're either, and this is going to sound a bit controversial, it's not the taking part that counts. We're in this to win it.
Winning, but it's the style of the winning. I think that's kind of an important factor, and I think we're seeing more and more of that. If I reflect back into early 2000s when I started my chartered surveying career, I used to see a similar thing happening. The guys that were best in class, they were best at the negotiating, the best at sourcing deals, etc. They were honing the blade, getting better and better at the day-to-day job, and they'd get promoted up into management, into leadership. And I always thought it was funny because they were getting removed from the bit that made them the powerhouse and thrown into something that they had no skill in. To get to the point of being the chartered surveyor, they'd gone through the uni courses, they'd done the extra learning, blah, blah, blah. But then in management, it was the equivalent of putting a 16-year-old just out of school, right, you're now in charge of a bunch of people. And what you would see, and I saw it with the smaller practices, is they started to crumble, and that was where the opportunities for the bigger companies were to kind of, picking over the bones and acquiring some of those businesses. And I think that was further exemplified or hammered home for me. I think there was a couple of podcasts that I pinged over to you, Michael, about how you can inadvertently kill a business through someone who's good but got toxic traits. They end up becoming that in that management role, and they create that toxic company, which it just crumbles and the employees leave. It's not a nice place to work. And when it's not a nice place to work, people aren't bleeding on the flag to keep it red. So the actual the turnover fails, the profitability fails, and it's just the domino effect of into oblivion. So I think you sounds like you went through that evolutionary process personally, and then came out of it, evolved, and a great success now as a result of that.
I think this is an important point, both about business generally, but estate agency specifically, even though we're trying to stay away from that. That I've seen loads of people, myself included, be promoted to that like top of the shop job, but with very little support or training, or you've won the right to the role because you're the best at the job, but that doesn't mean you're the best leader. And I think what this moment you're talking about, obviously we've spoke about that before, that feels to me for you like a really, really seminal moment then for everything else that came after.
100%, because, to Anthony's point there's plenty of people that are promoted that shouldn't be promoted. And truth be told, I didn't deserve to be promoted at that point, because you're a great lister, a great salesman, a great negotiator, but Ali, you're a shit manager. So the transition was, and whether it be online courses, whether it be training, speaking to the right people in the right place, but I suddenly became, right, I now own the result for the entire branch. And my job is to help, is to make sure these people see the end goal with you. You're not going to tell them how to get there. They need to trust that you're going to get there. And just be told, for the remainder of my career at KFH, there's plenty of people that didn't see the end goal and didn't really last too long on my team because it was success at all costs. But the leadership, my first, what I looked at is what this is the goal. It finished this, without realising the Spencer thing was actually really quite crucial, because it was top down. This is where we're going, how we're going to get there. And then I was holding people accountable, because it was the old corporate 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30, I can't remember, 8:30 morning meeting, 9 o'clock, we're on the tools. Where are we going? What are we achieving today? How many doing? Da-da-da. Which is the old KPI thing. But whilst in my business today, there's not a KPI in sight. But when I look at what I did at KFH, we had extreme success. We took a cold start office from 0 to 1 million in record time. It was phenomenal. And the team, whilst at the time they might think, Jesus Christ, Alan, because it was high intensity, lot of swearing, a lot of like, let's do this. And it wasn't swearing at people. It was like, the energy was high, but the reward, we had top negotiators across the business in my branch. We went skiing, we won awards. And whilst I wasn't looking for any thanks for it, I see that as success because I managed to encourage, and at the time, the word coaching and mentoring was new to me, so it meant nothing to me. But this is where we're going, guys. And they came with me and we achieved it. They were willing to produce the viewings and negotiate the deals. But the other thing, the difference between management and leadership is I showed them how I negotiated deals. This is how I put a viewing together. This is how I believe we should be booking a viewing. This is how you book a valuation. This is what you do in the lead up to. So the kind of meat and veg of estate agency, the absolute raw basic of estate agency, I believe I'm pretty good at it. But just feeling the way forward, and I was like, this is, now we're on the other side of it. Now I'm responsible for your result. Can I now point out why I'm actually kick your ass? You had no idea how much I was kicking your ass. So let me now understand, I'm now part of you. I'm now with you. I'm not against you. I'm with you. So let's go. Let's peel this back a bit and let's look at how you register buyers. Let's look at your buyer box. You get 350 buyers in that buyer box. I had 50 buyers that when I called them, they would answer the phone. When I went on holiday, my buyers wouldn't take a call from anyone else. No, I'll wait for Ali to get back. So I taught them and coached them and showed them, guys, if your buyers believe in you, they'll buy from you. So, and that's very simple estate to say at that point. But and at that time, I wasn't calling that leadership in any way, shape, or form. But it was the point where this is no longer about you, Ali. This is about the people around you. Where do they want to go? What do they want to do? And it was, on a side thing. Fast forward to today. I've got a coach in the background that's helping me with the team that I'm building here at Harper as at EXP, but it's more about the teams, the business that we were given autonomy to run a KFA branch like our own business. And if the people weren't part of the goal, like our target was £1 million, or let's say, I can't remember, I'll make this up, but let's say quarter three target was 325 grand exchanges. If the people within that business were not prepared to go to war for that result, they didn't have a place in the office then. There'll be someone else hungrier than you that'll sit in that seat. And I think that was how agency was at the time, because at the time it was KFH and Foxtons. It was like, how much do you want it? But how much do you want this? And then it was obviously mellowed and it's evolved from there to Axe and McLeod, the Spice of Heart that we talked about with Spencer and the thing. And obviously Keller Williams, where we spent some time. And I think the team that I built at Keller Williams is really strong. We obviously had CB as the OP, and God rest her soul, we had Julian. But I think the team that we built there, because it was tough to recruit, but at the same point, there was people leaning into me saying, "What are we going to do then?" Because I think leadership shows up in the way of different things, whether it's your coach, your mentor, your wife, your personal trainer at home, the people you're bit. Like we said earlier on, and Anthony picked on unless you're surrounded by people that are willing to lean in and recognise, I've still got more to do here. I am not the best version of myself, and I'm not going to get there on my own. I need someone to propel me.
I think it's an interesting umbrella term, the word management and leadership, sometimes interchangeable. But for me, I see two distinct, different types of people that can be within that heading. And uniquely, you can have a manager who's also a leader. And I think as a small business trying to get there, you have to put on the mantle of both. But the more you drill down and go niche and specialise, I've seen certainly over the past couple of months, and both in myself and in other teams, sometimes they become separate. So you can have our leader and you can also have a manager. So sometimes the roles can be split, which is quite interesting. They can double down in both the key areas. And I suppose to use a military analogy, you kind of have the guy who says, right, well, this is what we're going to go and do. And then his right-hand man who starts barking the orders at them. And I'm not saying that's the right way of going about it with the barking, but you kind of, again, you've got the inspirational leader and then the manager who's, right, come on, guys, let's get together. And then you've got your different management styles underneath that, whether it be more of a carrot style or more of a stick style.
This is why I believe you've had such success in the teams that you have built, because people were willing to lean into you and your coaching, but they were willing to follow you. I think there was total belief in that elite group that we were talking about, where we worked together, that you managed to harness and coach all of the best bits of everybody and motivate. We'll come back to a story about the seminal story of you and I and how that changed my life, certainly. But I think that's people follow you ultimately. That's that big thing.
The other thing to speak about just within leadership is, I personally believe that a leader in any field can only be a leader if they've walked in the same shoes that you're being invited to walk in. All right? And there's a couple of cliches I'm going to give, or not cliches, but things I can say. I would never, ever take criticism from anyone I wasn't going to ask for advice. And I don't think that comes from people. So, and we've spoken about this before, Michael, I believe some of the biggest failures in property, specifically in the industry we're in, have come from people in leadership roles that have never, ever conducted a viewing, never negotiated an offer, never listed a property. So why in God's name are they responsible for the... Do you see what I mean? That's me personally. I could be wrong. There'll be plenty of people who think, oh, I disagree. That's fine. That's just my opinion. But to kind of sum up leadership, I can't be an engine. Or if I'm leading a team, I can't be your engine, but I can be your rudder. Like Spencer was the engine. You were the engine, but I'll be the rudder. Do this because I've been in your shoes. I've walked in your shoes. You're not hitting your listing target, the goals that you've set yourself, because that's the other thing. Managers set goals, leadership help you achieve your goals.
I suppose it's like helping plot the course, but you've got to do the heavy lifting yourself. And I think I've seen good people fall down on that because they kind of think the business is going to come to them. Have a great idea, but unfortunately, you've got to get into the trenches and
it's got to be application. You've got to be willing to watch your application. You've got all these ideas, but how are you going to do it then? And that's where you need coaches, mentors, leaders in your life to brainstorm and let's achieve this goal together. I've been there, I've done that.
How important do you feel like honesty and transparency is between mentee and mentor? Because I think there's various people that we've had input in separately that for whatever reason at that time we couldn't support them to do what they wanted to do, that have then gone on to do greater things. And I think sometimes it's about a suitability and same right place, right time kind of thing. But I also think that, having that transparency and openness is really, really important. I don't know if you remember what you told me to really get me going, because I remember it very.
Tell me in a minute, but the leadership and honesty thing, the honesty is vital, but I think there's plenty of people that would thrive under different leadership environments and styles, because there's not one, like my leadership style quite obviously is completely different to a lot of other people. And there's other people who have a much softer approach and get a much gentler approach and get the outcome. So there's no right or wrong way to be a leader. There's different traits and attributes that leaders have, but honesty, you've got to be willing to be held accountable. You've got to have someone that's willing to hold you accountable. You've got to be willing to take the accountability on the chin and say you're right. And that's one of your strengths, Michael. Like I used to pull you apart at times, not in a horrible way, but just say, listen, hold on a minute up. That's not what you said you were going to do, or that. People say, oh, I really want it. Well, you don't really want it because you've missed the goal. And that's my point. I'm not your engine. I'm your rudder. I heard a story that somebody told me once about Gary Keller. Gary Keller used to coach people. And the first thing he'd say in the start of college, what's your goals? What have you achieved from last week? Oh, I've missed them. He'd hang up. There's nothing to talk about then. If you've missed your own goals, there's nothing I can add to this because you're not willing to hit your own goals. I can't help you, because that comes back to the whole point about I can't do the work for you, but I can give you the advice. But that's different if you're not in the trenches, like from a team perspective. And my role at Keller Williams, which inevitably has led me to where I am today, is because I wasn't in the trenches.
You highlighted being the rudder, to use that example, you highlighted the need for a course correction, i.e. you've been slacking for a week, you've done nothing, go away, fix that, report back next week when you've made the course adjustment, i.e. you've started, you've booted your engine up and you're back in the game, and then we can continue. I like that analogy.
And that's honesty in both parts, though, there, Anthony, because if you're not honest with yourself, then...
Oh, 100%.
And that was the biggest, that was my biggest frustration in Keller Williams, is there was plenty of people that said they would do it, but they didn't. And I was like, well, why do I care about your result more than you? Yeah. It can't be that way. You've got to care about your result more than me, and I'm here to help you, to prod you, to dig in the ribs and remind you, hold you accountable, hold the mirror up and say, this is what you said. You've not done it. Why? And that's where... There's people that's willing to be held accountable to that level. There's others like, well, it's up to me. Yeah, right, it is up to you. But don't invite a decorator in your house and then paint the house yourself then.
I think it's a really good observation, but I think it's a wider problem because not just within estate agent, we see it within solicitor communities, within mortgage broker communities. I'm a great believer in be a man of your word. Say a thing, do a thing by the time you said you'd do it. And it's black and white on that. And in countless times, you have to apply this filter kind of. So, I think all three of us we will be surrounded by our power team. I know these three brokers. I know those three solicitors. They won't let me down. down. They will take the phone call at 6:30 when it feels like the world's crashing down around my client's ankles. And when we have the opportunity, we are uniquely positioned to have the intellect, the ability and the motivation to fix this before it turns catastrophic. So it's a wider thing. And it's interesting because it's a massive opportunity for a lot of people to double down on. You know, if they refocus and say, well, I'd rather under-promise than over-deliver, rather than over-promise, under-deliver, overwhelm, and lose the business. Because that tends to be quite commonplace, sadly.
Yeah, and I think this transcends into every, whether it's a business field or personal life or people, we all have these big goals for various things, but without that pure accountability and someone to really keep you on track, it's really easy to fall off. You need to find it within yourself, really, to say. And again, that was really the seminal moment. Conversation essentially was I was having lunch with Naomi, I think, and
yes, I love the story.
You rang me and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "I just met Naomi for lunch in Starbucks," and I think you said something like, "Starbucks, you should be on a baked bean diet. You've got no listings, no this, no that, no the other." And then I think you said, you told me what someone else in the team had done. Smithy, yeah. And you put the phone down. And then
Smithy's just listed 6.
Yeah. And within 5 minutes, I rang you back and I said something along the lines of this isn't really working what we're doing. So now let's properly go. Proper openness, transparency, honesty from me to you and vice versa. Let's go. But that was a seminal moment. But my point being, without that, you know, I've always been willing to put the work in, but without that rudder, as you say, I'm not sure where this might have ended up. And it's interesting because clearly in everyone's lives, there'll be these seminal moments around leadership and accountability and responsibility that you just have to take when they present themselves. But yeah, that was an important moment for me, certainly. But it's interesting actually, because it's not too dissimilar perhaps to the conversation you had with those guys in the bar at KFH all those years ago.
I think everybody finds a moment at which they think, I didn't know I needed that, but now I need it.
Yeah.
I knew I'd never held, and I remember that conversation to this day, actually, because I'd had a call with Smithy, and I was like, fuck it, you're having a great week. You're having a good week. But I'd heard you speak about, because we always spoke about, well, Hillsy's doing this, Smithy's doing this, and I've got the 3 of you doing this, or the 6 of you, the 9 of you doing this. But you'd always ask subconsciously about what are they doing, what are they doing? And it must have subconsciously at that moment, I thought, I'm not going to hit Michael over the head with this. By the way, Michael, Josh has done this. Then I'm not. Because although you never said to me, it matters what someone else is doing, you had it within you. You had a competitive streak you just hadn't shown yet.
Hadn't turned on. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm a great believer in competition, but it's a real fine line between constructive and motivating competition and toxic competition, and that's it's a challenge to get that right, especially when you're operating a team.
But that does as well speak to the guys and girls that are in the team. Then there were some really high quality operators, and because of that level. We talked last week about your Power 5 and the people around you. That definitely spurred everyone on to go on and on and on and on and on for competitiveness, sure, but also because it was really interesting because we're all separate individual business owners, but it was very much a team there.
Because you were all getting coached the same way. You're all getting mentored the same way. You both, because you'd all turned into, and I had, what was it? It was 50, 60 people in that market centre. And there was 12 of you that had reached in and said, Ali, I need to go. Let's make this bigger. I was like, let's go then. I had the space to do the lot. But it very quickly became, I'll deal with the top 20%. And there was loads of people say, I want to get into 20%, which was good, but they just didn't do what it needed. He said, well, that's fine. Go away and do that then. Come back to me. Because it was like an elite club. To be in this environment where we're going to talk numbers, strategy, goals, end results, commission, life-changing things. What do you want to do? What's your next holiday look like? How are you going to get there? Da, da, da. And it was holding the mirror up again. But the competition piece, in many ways, it doesn't really matter what the competition is doing. As long as you run your own race, are you the best of yourself? If you're not, you need someone in your life to help you get there. And just on a side note, because it's something that doesn't so much plague my life every day, but it keeps me awake at night thinking, if I were running the corporate businesses here right now in my town, and I was a leader in those businesses, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Because up until 4 years ago, they were uncontested. They were just running the normal corporate on up, take photos in your iPhone, stick it right move, wait for the phone to ring. We don't do floor plans, don't do that. Along comes this aggressive Scottish kid who says, I'm going to do it better and different because this what you call the stages here in Northumberland wouldn't last 5 minutes in London. So we're going to do it this way.
Just to interject another, how much of an impact do you think that's been? Because we've all worked in London, so we've seen a different type of environment where it was very much not dog eat dog as such, but you're only as good as what you did last week or last month. And I think sometimes in other parts that aren't so metropolitan, that isn't necessarily the case. But I think you look at the people that we've talked about, they've all had groundings in that kind of environment.
Well, I think, they're competitive, right? They are competitive. And I'll come back to that. So remind me, we'll come back to the competition that they pose to me or what they do. But the point I'm trying to make clear is the leaders within those corporate businesses have not sat up, looked at the market and thought, this Scottish kid with his wife sitting in his home office above his garage is taking our market share. What's he doing? Because when I look at my time at KFH or any other business where I was responsible for the result, I paid very close attention to what the competition were doing. Who's got market share? What are they doing differently? When I joined KFH, I was headhunted from Andrews and Partners because I was outlisting their manager. They were like, well, we need this kid then. We need him. It was me, Simon Stone, James Angers. We're like, we need them because they're beating us. And in KFH's eyes, they were just a 2-bit agency down the road. Turns out 100 Partners are a pretty big deal. They're a big deal, especially over in the West Country. But anyway, in Stratham Spitling, we were kicking their ass. So the guys at KFH were like, we need that. But none of them here have adapted. They're still not doing floor plans. They're not doing professional photos. They don't use social media. Now, I'm not saying they're the biggest tools I've got, but they're 100% omnipresent in every single thing I do and every single property I take to market. They're not changing. So that concerns me about the leadership of, they're not looking at it because they're just head down, list. Because I think they're listing and their competition, coming back to that point, they see themselves, they will overvalue and underprice on fees, which is inherently, it doesn't matter how great an estate agent you are, you're going to face that. If I go and say, Michael, I think your property's worth 5 to 525 and my fee's 1.5%. And Anthony rocks him, so I think if house is worth 550, I'll do it for 1%. Simple economics says, well, he's going to get me £25 more, Robbie. 25 to 50. And he's cheaper than you. But the difference is, and the reason I'm bringing this up in the leadership conversation is because who's guiding that client? Who's leading that client? Who's giving them the best advice to get the outcome they deserve? Now, I'm not saying for a second that, that my words are gospel, but at the same point, they're tying these people into a 60-week contract to buy market share. And that doesn't really add up. Yeah, but again, who's guiding them? There's somebody somewhere telling them that's the right way to do estate agency. That's how to win.
It reminds me, though, of the Blockbuster Netflix conversation. Same thing. Blockbuster, I think, had the chance to buy Netflix for some inordinately low amount of money. And the directors there basically were laughing at Netflix. And then obviously we all know the rest of that story. So the leadership steering the ship of whatever thing you're trying to do, whether it's you're running your household, your fitness, your business, whatever it is, you need to spot those signs, definitely. Because otherwise, before you know it, someone else is going to run past you. You're not going to be able to catch them back up again.
But to relate it back to some of those stories, it actually shows that the problem we're talking about is much bigger than we're actually thinking. Because if you've got the leadership of the team that have been promoted out of being best in class, what's their experience in management and leadership, those guys, if they do that long enough, they become the directors. So what you end up with is you get a continuation of the problem with this lack of training, understanding, management experience. So they're looking down at the management level below them, and they can't see the failing, which is exactly what you were talking about then, Ali, of why aren't they spotting? Well, if that guy's doing more, that they're not observant enough, they're not trained to be looking, then they're not even interested or capable of implementing it. And it's because this leadership management problem, it's actually systemic. It goes all the way up the food chain.
So then to bring this back in, so what then, Ali, to you, given what we've just said about these different examples and given the fact this is the highest level podcast, what does the highest level of leadership look like to you?
I think the best approach to leadership is someone who has the ability to bring out the best in others, because that's what leadership is. Management, we already know what the result's going to be, and we're going to get there, and I'm going to tell you how we're going to get there. Whereas leadership is, as a leader, I don't know what the result's going to be. You tell me where you want to go, and I'm going to help you achieve that, and I'm going to bring out the best in you. Or there are managers who make good leaders say, well, this is where we're going to go, and it's my job to encourage, coach, mentor, guide, show how to get there. And show is a really important word. It's just a standard word, but show means a lot, because you might not know how to get there yet, Michael, but I'm going to show you. I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to show you.
So it sounds to me like the key attribute you're highlighting here, the key component is to lead, to be that leader, because if you can lead, exemplify, course correct, highlight the route, and then and make sure people have the ability to self-manage, you don't have to do the picking up after them. They will gravitate to you. They will, work the extra time, because they know that the extra time they put in outside of the classic 9 to 5, whatever, it's only going to reward them, and they're happy to do it. And when you're happy to put the effort in, put more effort in, everybody wins. So that's what it sounds like you're saying there, that the leadership and the ability to lead is the crux of it.
Back to Spencer, it's like, where are we going? And I'll lead you there. I'll open the way. You just walk through the door.
How are we going to get there? What action points?
Yeah.
You got to be willing to break it down. But I think you got to have the best leader, but if the team around them, the team that they're leading, don't want to be part of that journey or don't share the common goal, there are great leaders who are made to look shit.
Yeah.
That's my point. So I don't think we're putting a lot of emphasis on the leader. The leader is just a very important ingredient, but they're not the whole recipe.
Yeah, without the ingredients of team, that stunts the
Because I don't know, in any industry across all walks of life, nobody, to my knowledge anyway, is become super successful without having some sort of leader, mentor, guide in their life to course correct, hold them accountable to their polar north, whatever. Which is where I brought the F1 thing in earlier on. You don't see it. It was Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, whatever. And what you don't understand is the effort that goes in behind to make sure that he's not on the piss the night before or eating burgers and chips. It's like, Anthony was gracious enough to talk about his weight loss a minute. I've got a personal trainer at the minute, because I know, as disciplined as I am shit in the gym on my own. I can't go. I get distracted. And I can't be bothered. That's a bit heavy. But if I pay someone and I tell someone, I'll be with you at this time every day, I am completely surrendered in the fact that I ain't letting that guy down, because this guy is willing to lead me to a fitness goal. So I've got to turn up. I remember, I can't remember if I told you, but the first best trainer I've ever had outside of rugby, when I was working in East Ayrshire KFH, guy called Alvaro, Brazilian guy, ex-military from Brazil. And the first thing he ever said to me is, how will you know if this is working? I said, if I'm sick. He said, right. And he made me throw up for the first month. And then he looked at the measurements. He said, well, there you go. Now what's the next step? Because we're through the sickness bit. You've got it now. But he was a leader. And I was reading your message earlier on about personal business. Personal trainers are every. Your wife. There is somebody in the house, somebody in the household that leads without realizing. Like, who's choosing dinner? Who's choosing what TV program? Who's choosing what flooring? We're getting flooring put in the house just now, and we've just changed the spindles on the staircase. That was a leadership debate and a half, I'll tell you.
I might end up calling that a draw. I've made a note here, something you said earlier. I just wanted to circle back to just to clarify something, because it might be a really good learning point for people. So in helping get Spencer to his fantastic success, you essentially had KPIs for him, and then you touched on yourself about how you're running your business now. And I think if I'm quoting you correctly, there's not a KPI in sight. I was just curious to understand a little bit more about that, in terms of, is that an evolution of your management style, or is that an opportunity for you maybe to go, do you know what, maybe I do need to put a few more KPIs in there? So I just wanted to dissect that a little bit.
So yeah, good point. Right. So let's look at this from a very high level. A KPI does not help the client. Can we agree to that? I don't believe a KPI set in a corporate business helps a client. The people with a house to sell or price to buy don't give a shit whether you're on target or not.
You could argue it hurts the client because if they're forced to try and hit a target, it means the service may well compromise in order for them to hit the KPI. That's a really interesting point.
So, and I don't mind admitting, when I sat down with Spencer and we had that KPI of the fictitious 281, not one thought was given to the sellers of Essex or Rayleigh and C or Lee and C. Not one thought did we think, how's this going to benefit the client? I knew the client, Spencer's bedside manner and his willingness to close a deal was second to none. Been out with a guy, or shadowed with him, saw how he operated, and I was like, yeah, I'd listen to you, mate. But at no point, and I could be wrong on what I'm about to say here, but at no point did we, part of that conversation was, what's the fee going to be? And the price you list at, is it saleable? Now, I could be really polite and make this up and say, yeah, they were all 2% fees and they were all priced to sell. They all sold week one. I have no idea. Spencer probably has absolutely no idea because we were hunting a singular KPI. The singular personal goal was to be the best lister in that corporate business nationwide. That's all that mattered. Now, if I had a KPI here, that's not the best for my client because I say to everyone right now, I'm not here to sell your house. I'm here to help you move. So where are you moving to? What do you want to move to? And can I help you get there? And the more people that believe and trust in me, the bigger my business is going to be. But if I said, I'll tell you what I do, I don't care who I speak to, I don't care how many bars I've got to go on, I must list 9 this week.
I think we need to reframe that though, because although that's not a KPI, you're operating the values-based part of the business. That's the goal, isn't it? So whilst the KPI isn't measurable in that sense, it's more empathetic than that, and but it is around getting that person to succeed.
It's not written down as how many vowels, how many phone calls, how many vowels, how many door knocking sessions, how many instructions, Nah, it doesn't matter.
It's the definition, the key bit, isn't it? Make sure your goal is aligned with what the client wants, not what to relate it again to corporate, not what the boss wants, it's what the client wants, because we all know not all business is good business, but good business is doing a good job for your client. And ironically, from that stems lots more good business.
But I think that's because so many of us in our space have worked that out and we've moved away from corporate KPI of this many units, this many sales, et cetera, to our overarching goal is to get this person moved to whatever that next stage is in their life with the most money, preferably, if that's the right thing for them or what have you, but with the least amount of stress, but get them to where they want to get to. So I think what's actually happened is we transitioned from being business focused, as in what does our business want, to client focused as to what do they want. And that ironically drives the business growth anywhere.
I'd say service delivery, premier service delivery. That's our key role.
I think if you vet your clients, so let's take this a step back, because there is a KPI that I'll come to in a second here that we all work to that we probably don't document enough. But if we book the valuation correctly, if a reputation is, let's assume that everybody knows the success, they've seen your boards, if you're vetting that client correctly on the phone and you know that they want a positive outcome, they've seen what you do, they've heard how you operate, word of mouth, read your testimonials, they see a face on all the boards that say sold, like, I want to move. Because the 2 questions I will ask, no matter where the conversation goes from booking a valuation is, what's the reason for the valuation? Where are you moving to? One question around that. Second one is, who's recommended this? So if I know those 2 things, I know when I go on that valuation, it's mine to lose. Okay? So the KPI that I have, that I hold myself accountable to without writing it down, is, am I winning more than I'm losing of the evaluations? What's my valuation to instruction ratio? And that's not because I'm overpricing them or whatever. It's more because I know when I'm going to go out on a valuation, I should add to this, for complete clarity, there are people I will not go and value. I don't think I'm right here. And I know there's a huge fee debate. Which are fees? I already know I'm not coming out to see you. Because that's the first question you're going to ask me. You have no interest in what value I'm going to bring.
That's interesting to flag up there, because we all encounter it, people that make cost-based decisions versus value-based decisions. And it's kind of, we want to minimize the cost, but we also want to maximize the net money that comes in. And you can't necessarily draw an analogy between the two. The best value proposition and working with those type of clients, they're the ones that we help the most, and we deliver the best service and the best end result for. I think that's a really interesting and valid.
Because they're willing to go on your journey. They're not going to try and compromise your business. They're not, because if they, what is it? What was it? I wrote this down on message. Look, cheap. What is it? Cheap.
Cheap isn't good. Good isn't cheap. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Whatever. It's good, cheap, and fast, or something.
Yeah.
Good and fast is not cheap. Fast and cheap is not good. Or those kind of things. But whenever, and don't get me wrong, I don't really want to get into a debate that I've seen on LinkedIn every year for the last, just tag big man about, but just tell them what your fee is. I think there is KPI, something. It's not. I don't document it, because I know if I think about, we spoke to Michael about, and all the guys and everyone else I've had the pleasure of leading in the past. I was holding them accountable to KPIs, but the KPIs were not KPIs. They were the goals. What do you want to achieve? I didn't tell Michael he needed to do 10 listings a week. What do you want to achieve? Well, I want to earn this amount of money. Okay, what does that money do for you then? How does that change your life?
Which I think is the single most powerful thing we can get anybody to do, partners in life, team members, self-discovery, clients, help, give them the data, take them by the hand and, interpret the data, help them self-discover actually to get from A to B. And again, it goes back to the course correction. It's kind of, this is the most likely path, rather than, you don't tell it, you sell it, but they've got to be receptive to it. And again, that goes back to making sure the people in your team are receptive, are malleable, learning based, and all that kind of jazz. And if people aren't, that's fine. There's a different team somewhere else where they can integrate and probably be happy, because if that's the way they're hardwired up, it's important that we are all in the correct lane for ourselves, I think. And I think that's a good way of maybe politically explaining that one away.
Yeah, no. You've said that a lot better than me. If they're not willing to grow, there's no place in this team, what my coach has said to me. That's not being harsh. It's just, well, you're not part of this team then, because this team's going in this direction. Mm-hmm. I think that was, when he first said that to me, I thought, that's a nicer way of how we handle life. If you're not willing to win, if you're not willing to be the best man and stuff, there's no place in this. There's no place.
They turned up to play basketball with a football. They're just on the wrong pitch.
It's so they're going to hold the team back. We've not really spoken this, but part of leadership or team leading, whatever it is, selecting the right people are all going to feed into the end goal. I find it described to me as like a garden. Good gardeners pay very careful attention to what plants they plant next to each other. A blueberry bush next to a rose bush. That rose bush is shagged. It's had it, because that blueberry bush takes. Now I know nothing about this. I'm quoting what somebody's told me in the past. It's the same with building a team. It's got to be looked after, and if a diseased plant, there's a cancerous plant, it's got to be removed. Otherwise, it
quickly
it poisons the rest of the team. Yeah, and it's the leaders. So that's the thing about a good leader: to recognise where energy needs to be poured into. So they've got to be omnipresent. There's got to be an overreaching view, say, well, I recognise that Michael's not pulling as hard as Anthony, so Michael needs more care. What's going on, Michael? You've gone off the bottle. But if I was a crop leader, I would recognise that. I'm just banging the drum going, come on, we've got it. Where's these 15 listings coming from? But I recognise, well, hold on a minute. Like, Anthony's given us 10 already. Where's Michael? So you need to recognise. So there's bits, and I'm always learning and always healing, which is why, coming back full circle to how good a leader is, if the people that want to be led are reaching out and saying, lead me, then success is going to follow. Because there's plenty of people who are really nice people, really good, anything, whatever they do, but they may be just happy with a lot. But if you have a leader that's got 10 of them, you think, well, he's not doing very well. It's not his fault. Well, I listen to a lot of what Simon Sinek says, and it's just absolute gold. Like, you just think, well, yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, he's great to listen to. Big fan of Simon's.
Never thought of that. And, because there's something which I can relate back to this. He said something about he was out for dinner with a friend, and he said, how are you going? He said, having a terrible time. He says, why did you not tell me before? He said, well, I tried calling you. Didn't answer. When I needed you, you didn't answer. So he's changed the code to, you need 8 minutes. You got 8 minutes, which means I need you right now. There's a lesson there about, whilst we talked on one hand about leadership being, you recognize where the weaknesses and strengths are, you apply the pressure or the ointment in whatever direction needs to go. Sometimes you need somebody willing to say, I'm getting this wrong. Anthony, Michael, have you got 5 minutes? I need 8 minutes to get it. Because that's sometimes all people need, just to course correct, just to get back on a level, to be a bit excessive about it before they jump off the bridge. Put the rope down, it's fine. We're okay. But there's got to be a bit of self within you. There's got to be, I've got to recognize it. I'm not doing well yet. I need someone. I could be wrong, but I don't think a leader can just suddenly turn someone into, in any industry, in any role, a superstar. They've got to be willing to get there. I know this may not be the kind of the direction you want to take this in charge, but I think it's important to recognize it's not about the leader. It's just the right person that's implemented within a business or an industry or family or whatever, an environment, who gets the best out of people. But those people have got to be willing to say, there's more here. This seed is not fully flowered yet.
In summary, what we're saying is a leader, you can be as good a leader as you want, but you're only ever as good as the sum of your parts of your team.
100%.
You've got to be willing yourself to be accountable and take responsibility, be learning based, but you need your team members to do the same. You've got to have a wide view on what's going on in the team as well and work out, who needs support, who needs this, who needs that, who needs the other. So, yeah, I guess a lot of people think about it as in leadership is this one thing that comes from a person, but it has to be the whole thing, as well as what Simon said about casting the vision to the team to bring them along with you.
The skills involved, leadership involves a certain amount of skills and humility in whatever. And I think we touched on this about you got to stood in their shoes. I think I've always taken people out of the comfort zone as well.
Yeah.
Like the Bruce Lee thing. You didn't practice 5,000 different kicks. You practiced one kick 5,000 times. Johnny Wilkinson in the lead up to that 2003 World Cup.
Yeah.
What was the guy's name? He's quite famous actually. I'm a sports coach.
The psychologist.
Yeah.
Was it Steve Peters? I'm not sure. It might have been. Might be someone else.
But I bring him up, but it's a complete argument with what I'm saying to myself here. This guy's never played a game of rugby in his life. But he got the absolute best out of Johnny Wilkinson.
Yeah.
But then to the point about we got the best out of you, Michael. We got really great results out of you and Josh and Ilse and a handful of other people. But there's other people that I tried to coach or mentor that just fell flat in the face. So that highlights that you and me might have worked really well together. We worked really closely together and the results produced Spencer as well, in previous lives, whatever. But there's other people as well. So that's my point about, you could actually, there'll be other people who would think, wow, you were a shit leader. I achieved nothing, which is fair. But then my question is, but you didn't turn up though. You didn't apply. Again, coming back to the same bit, I can't do it for you. There's no right or wrong way to lead somebody. But, to finish your point about honesty, I think there's got to be honesty on both sides. If you're not both honest with each other, because I think you've got to bear it all. It's got to be, we've got the trenches, draw blood, draw all out. What sacrifices are you going to make? I'll sacrifice if you'll sacrifice. But I'm not going to draw blood if you're not willing to draw blood. It's your goals, not mine. I'm here to help you get there. I'm here to retune or redirect or open up your thought process. What have you thought about this? What about this? Try this. And that didn't work. Okay, well, at least we can cross that off and do it. I think leadership's really the biggest. It's a massive topic in any industry because there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of responsibility, there's a lot of onus is put on, which is why I think you'll find a lot of corporate businesses, middle management stripped in. It's a very fragile position to have as a regional director or area manager because they're not really in the trenches, which is why I'm back doing what I'm doing right now. Because leadership was one thing and I enjoyed my time, but the frustration of having a lesser number of people successful than I would hope for, the enjoyment wasn't there for me. So I'm going to do it myself then. Practice what you preach. Then here we are.
You've done that.
Here we are, mate. Winning on a podcast. Superstars.
Yeah, to be honest, we could. I feel like this could go on and on because there is so much value, and as you said, there's so much to unpick in all of that. But yeah, I for one want to just thank you for coming on, certainly, and thank you for your mentorship and counsel because said this in public before. I genuinely think I would have struggled to get to where I am without that. So Every thanks to you.
Very kind of you, mate, but you've got the yourself.
Thanks very much for the information you imparted on Michael, because he's echoed it through to me, and I absolutely love that baked bean stories.
All I'm doing is kind of repeating what other people have told me and kind of, lessons along the way of what I got wrong. And I've got enough humility to recognise.
Was it Isaac Newton that when someone was giving him accolades and he said, "Hey, I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants over here"? And I think that in part is what he's saying there, pulling
Success leaves clues. Success leaves clues.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're willing to pick up the clues and read them. I think I'm all cliched out.
Thanks so much, everybody. Yeah, it's certainly been thought-provoking for me. I'm sure it's been thought-provoking for the listeners. Lots of notes taken, lots of things to action and things to double down on.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, gents.
Thanks for listening to Highest Level with Michael Bailey and Anthony Dawson. If this episode inspired you, like, review, and share the podcast. Your support helps others level up too. Until next time, keep growing towards your highest level.